Hello everyone, and welcome back to my World of Tanks Xbox 360 guide. Today we are going to be talking about the FV4202. Now this tank is a tier 10 British medium tank. When you unlock this tank, there is no research required. Everything that you see on this tank you get. No guns to unlock, no tracks, no engines, nothing. Going through this line is not a bad grind. It is fairly quick. All the medium tanks in this British line are pretty good. So, what is this tank good at? Well, it has an excellent gun, excellent rate of fire, a decent turret, diesel frontal hull armor for a medium tank. If you see, this lower glacis is pretty small. A frontal upper plate is very sloped. Now this turret does have flat spots. If you see the turret ring below the gun here, very flat. Anything that shoots you in this turret ring will probably be able to penetrate. Very big turret ring here, very flat. You don't have a gun mantle, so tanks that shoot you in the gun may be able to penetrate on this flat spot, beside the gun, but it's a very hard target to hit. Very good turret, except for the commander hatch on top. If you look, weak point of this tank, very weak point, very bad weak point for this tank. Very big target to hit. This medium tank is slower than all the other medium tanks at tier 10, but it has great mobility. This thing turns and just moves across terrain so well, better than other medium tanks. Yes, you're slower than other medium tanks, but this thing just gets across the ground on sand and grass and concrete. It just moves through them like butter, like it just slides across. This tank is wonderful at doing that. So with that in mind, let's talk about what this tank gets. The turret is the FV4202. Pretty good turret. Not great, not bad. Your gun is 105mm Royal Ordnance L7A1. Very good gun. Your engine is Rolls-Royce Meteor M120A. Very good engine. Your suspension is FV4202, and your radio is SRC45. The hit points on this tank is 1,950 hit points on this tank. Little below average for a medium tank. Most other medium tanks get around 2,000. I mean, you only have 50 less, so not bad, but you never know. Those extra 50 points could have saved your life. Maybe it couldn't, but you definitely can't take maybe that extra hit as the other medium tanks can. Let's talk about the signal range. You get 750-meter signal range. Of course, your tier 10, all the tier 10s, you know, great radio range. Let's talk about the speed limit of this tank. That's what I was talking about at the beginning. Speed limit, 40 kilometers per hour. You are the slowest tier 10 medium tank. Now, it does accelerate pretty quickly. You will accelerate faster than other tanks. You will get up to your top speed faster than other medium tanks can get to their top speed, but other medium tanks have a faster top speed, so in the long run they'll be able to surpass you, but starting at a dead stop you'll be able to take off and get up to your top speed. Your speed limit going backwards is going to be 20 kilometers per hour, about average for most tanks. Let's talk about the weight of this tank. Very light tank, 40-ton tank. You're not gonna ram people in this tank. Do not attempt to ram anything in this tank. You will fail miserably, unless it's like a light tank. But trying to ram other medium tanks, heavy tanks, tank destroyers, don't attempt to do it in this tank. You're going to take a significant amount of damage just because this tank does not weigh a lot. The load limit for this tank is 42.5 tons. So let's talk about the crew. You're going to get a commander, a gunner, a driver, and a loader. Now your loader in this tank will act as your radio operator. So if your loader goes down, your radio operator goes down. Let's talk about the hull armor of this tank. 121 millimeters in the front, but look at the frontal plate, very sloped. This frontal plate is very troll. Tanks will have somewhat kind of difficulty of pinning the top frontal plate of this tank. The lower glacis is a very small target indeed. If you can get this lower glacis hidden, you'll have a pretty good chance. Let's talk about the side armor. 51 millimeters, horrible. Everything's going to be able to penetrate you in the side. This tank, you're not going to be able to angle it very well, just because the sides are, it does have some spaced armor here, but it's not too great. 32 millimeters in the rear. So let's talk about if you're in battle and you who are trying to angle this tank. You want to angle this tank about like this. This will give you the best chance to ricochet a shot. Any more or any less, the enemy will have a better chance of penetrating. So if you're angling like this, like a German tank, they have a pretty good chance of hitting the side of your tank and damaging it. Although if they do aim for the front, they will bounce. You just got to be paying attention to your enemy, what they're doing. But this angle here will give you the best chance of ricocheting a shot. Not a great tank to be side scraping in. Now let's talk about the turret. The turret in the front gets 196 millimeters of armor in the front. It's very well rounded, has some sloping to the frontal part of this above the gun, but as I was saying, the turret ring, all this, the turret ring below the gun is flat. Anything that shoots you there will probably be able to penetrate you. Commander hatch, they will be able to pin. Now, these boxes on the side of this turret, these are no hit zones. If you shoot at these boxes on the side of this turret, you are going to do no damage. There are no hit boxes. Where the smoke launchers are, you're going to do nothing. Side of the turret, 196 millimeters of armor. Very good. But as you can see, there's not very much sloping to the side of the turret, so anything that pretty much shoots you in the side of the turret will probably be able to pin, depending on the angle that you're at, if you're moving your turret and so forth. Rear of the turret, horrible 35 millimeters of armor. Not good at all. Anything that shoots you in the back of the turret is going to damage you. Let's talk about the engine. 810 horsepower engine, very good for this tank. It's going to give you a horsepower to weight ratio of 20.25 horsepower to ton ratio. So you can pop out and in and out shooting your gun. Not as good as some other medium tanks, but it is capable of doing what it is supposed to be able to do. The fire chance in this tank is only going to be 20% chance of being set on fire in this tank. Now, I don't get set on fire quite often in this tank, but I have been set on fire more than other medium tanks, I would say, in this tank. Basically because of the weak armor on the sides and the rear. So it would probably be in your best interest to put an automatic fire extinguisher or a manual fire extinguisher on this tank. Let's talk about the view range. 410 meter view range. Excellent. You're going to be able to spot your enemies before they spot you. This tank is a great recon tank. You will be able to spot the bigger tanks for your team. The transverse speed of this tank, basically what that means is rotating your hull like this, 40 degrees per second. That is excellent. This tank turns on a dime. I mean, this tank has such great mobility, even though it doesn't have a high rate of speed. Or the turret is 40 degrees per second, my bad. But the turret, it just rotates so fast. The hull rotates at 50 degrees per second. That is amazing. I mean, no tanks are going to be able to circle your tank. I mean, this tank, the ground resistance on this tank is excellent. I mean, you just slide across terrain like butter. It's like you're on ice. This thing is awesome. But it can't brawl, so you don't want to get into a brawling match with other medium tanks. You'll probably deplete your health pool trying to brawl with medium tanks. Now, this tank can circle heavy tanks, not as well as other medium tanks, but it can circle and do what it needs to do just because of its mobility. You can shake and bake, as I would like to call it. You can shake your hull around better, you know, maneuver your tank so much better, even though you don't have the top speed to like keep circling maybe, but it can do what it needs to do. Let's talk about the ammo for this tank. It gets APCR, armor piercing composite rigid rounds. That is its standard ammo. That's pretty much comes standard on all tier 10 medium tanks. Most people who play this game get in their first tier 10 tanks, you know, they think that these medium tanks are shooting gold. They're not shooting gold. Most tier 10 medium tanks come standard with armor piercing composite rigid rounds. Now, what makes this gun special is that it gets to fire HESH, high explosive squash head rounds. Now, to put that into perspective, that is what the Death Star fires. That's what most people fire at you in a Death Star. That's what the Death Star is known for, is its high explosive squash head rounds. That's what gives it the capability of one-shotting any tank. This tank gets those, the high explosive squash head rounds. Let's go check that out. And this right here. It's going to cost you 5,200 gold, or not gold, silver, to fire squash heads. But to put that in perspective, you hit your target, it's going to do damage. No matter what. It does not have to penetrate. All it has to do is hit the target, you do damage. Now this tank also gets high explosive rounds. Now both the squash heads and the high explosives have an explosive radius of 1.91 meters. That's not great. So if you miss your target, you miss. Let's talk about the penetrations of these shells. Your APCR is going to get 268 millimeters of penetration. You're going to be able to penetrate anything you shoot at. Your squash head rounds are going to get 210 millimeters of penetration. Pretty good for a squash head round. And your high explosive is only going to get 105 millimeters. Squash heads are amazing on this tank. You do want to load some high explosive squash head rounds. 210 millimeters of penetration. The round does not have to penetrate to do damage. So, what are the squash heads good for? Say there's a tank hull down, strong turret, like let's say there's an E100 in front of you, or a Jagdpanzer E100, or an IS-7, or an IS-4, you know, the more heavily armored tanks, and you're having trouble penetrating their tank. You know, you take a couple of shots at them, you can't penetrate their tank, they're in a great position. Load in some high explosive squash head rounds. Start shooting those bad boys into their tank. You're going to do damage to their tank, whether the shell penetrates or it doesn't. You're going to do damage to their tank. You're going to, since it's a high explosive round, you may start taking out their crew members, damaging their modules on their tank. They're going to start getting extremely pissed. Let's talk about the shell speed of your ammo. Your APCR shell speed is going to be 1,478 meters per second. High explosive squash head rounds are going to travel at 1,173 meters per second. And the high explosive is also going to travel at 1,173 meters per second. So your APCR is going to hit your target a lot faster than squash heads or high explosives. Now let's talk about the damage per minute. The damage per minute for the APCR is going to be 2,722 hit points per minute. Your high explosive squash heads are going to be able to do 3,350 hit points per minute. But in order to do that, all your high explosive squash head rounds are going to have to penetrate. And that's also the same for your high explosive. Let's talk about what kind of hit points these shells do. Your APCR is going to do an average of 390 hit points whenever you hit a target. Now your high explosive squash head round, your gold round, is going to be able to do 480. That's amazing. That, I mean, when I penetrate, I usually high roll to about 500. So that is pretty good. And your high explosive also does 480 average hit points, but the high explosive is a little bit harder to penetrate. Now, if your high explosive squash head round does not penetrate, you're not gonna do the average of 480. You're gonna more likely do more of a 200 roll, maybe a 100 roll, maybe even less than 100. I've done less than 100. I've like hit someone for like 80. But the high explosive squash head rounds, definitely want to load a good amount of high explosive squash head rounds in this tank. Let's talk about the rate of fire. Rate of fire is going to be 6.98 rounds per minute. Pretty good. This gun is a slower rate of fire gun than most of the other medium tanks. The reload time is pretty good. Not great. Like I said, some of the most medium tanks at this tier are going to be able to reload faster than you. The reload time is 8.6 seconds. Now you can get that reload time down by adding a gun rammer, getting Brothers in Arms, and other skills and perks that will help with that reload time, getting 100% crew. Let's talk about the accuracy. Accuracy of this gun is damn good. 0.32 meter accuracy. Excellent accuracy on this gun. Your aim time is pretty good as well. 2.1 second aim time. Now you can get that aim time down into the 1 seconds with enhanced gun laying drive, getting 100% crew, Brothers in Arms, other skills and perks that will help. Now let's talk about another strength of this tank. This tank gets great gun depression. You're going to get 10 degrees of gun depression. That means you're going to be able to poke up over a hill, get that gun down. This tank can aim down on enemies. The gun elevation is 20 degrees. That's also pretty good. Excellent. You're going to be able to aim up at tanks and shoot tanks that are up on hills and stuff. That's why I said if you can get this tank hull down and just expose its turret, you can shoot down on enemies with your gun depression. This tank comes standard with 72 rounds of ammo. So that is what this tank is capable of carrying. Let's talk about camo values for this tank. This tank has pretty good camo values. Now this is without hiding behind any bushes or any other obstructions. This is just out in the open. Camo value, while stationary, is 13% camo value. While in motion, it's going to be 9%. And when firing, 2.89%. Pretty good. Not bad. But it is a fairly large medium tank. So, if you do get spotted, you're not too small of a target to hit. This tank does have a pretty big hull, a pretty tall turret, and you don't have speed as some of the other tier 10 medium tanks. Let's talk about the battle performance of this tank. For the average player playing this tank, this is for the average player, you're going to hit about 76.2% of your shots. Your win rate in this tank is going to be 51.6%. Your damage dealt in a battle is going to be about 1,835. And your kills per battle is going to be close to 1. It's going to be about a 0.93. So With that in mind, let's talk about the equipment that you should put on this tank. Equipment. You will need to put on Approved Ventilation Class 2. This is going to add 5% to all your crew skills. This is going to add camo values to your tank, everything. It's just going to make your tank better. It increases everything by 5%. You're going to want a medium caliber tank gun rammer. You want to get that reload time down. Your gun does not fire as fast as other medium tanks. You're going to want a vertical stabilizer. This is going to add 20% to accuracy while you're moving in your turret rotation. You do not want to be sitting stationary in this tank. You want to be moving around. It is going to help with firing on the move. Let's talk about consumables that you should put on this tank. You're either going to want a large repair kit or a small repair kit, a large first aid kit or a small first aid kit. Now, I would not go for 100. I would not go for the gasoline. It's not going. I mean, this tank accelerates fast, so the gasoline is not really recommended for this medium tank in particular. You accelerate up to your top speed and can do what you need to do to duck in and out of cover fairly more easily than other medium tanks, even though you don't have the top speed. So these octane gasolines won't really need to be necessary. You can put them on your tank, but I really wouldn't recommend it. Automatic fire extinguisher could be a good idea putting on this tank, or even a manual fire extinguisher, or you could even go with pudding and tea. That's going to add 10% to all the skills of your tank for the entire course of the battle. So let's summarize this tank and what you should do at the beginning of a battle. This tank does not have high a high speed. So if you're out too far and your base is starting to get captured, this tank is going to have a hard time trying to get back to your base to defend it, just because of its low speed. What this tank is great at doing is spotting enemy tanks for your team. Now, you don't want to act like you don't want to go out and go kamikaze and get yourself killed by spotting. Spot targets and try and keep them lit up for your team to help your team support you. Don't go out alone in this tank. Make sure you have support. You're supposed to be supporting your team in this tank. This is a support tank. This is a sniper tank. You can hide back, and you can even hide back with tank destroyers and snipe with this tank if that's your play style. At the beginning of the game, you know, you can sit back and snipe depending on the map that you're on. But you don't want to be heading the charge. This tank has a very big weak point, two very big weak points on this tank, and that's the turret ring and the commander hatch. I mean, you don't want to be up close and personal with tanks, so you don't want to be leading the charge. You want to you're a second to third line defense or offensive tank, supporting your team. You want to be hiding behind other heavy tanks. Use other heavy tanks as armor on your team. That's what heavy tanks are there for, is to help you hide behind them and use their armor. Now, with that in mind, I'm going to leave you with a couple of replays in this tank showing you what this tank is capable of doing. Alright everyone, so here we are on Sacred Valley. It is a standard battle. I'm only going to be showing you guys one replay. I happened to get this map, and this map here is the perfect map to show you guys exactly all the things that this tank can do. So I don't have to show you guys multiple replays. We can get this done in one replay. So, starting out, this is Tier 10 battle. Take a look at the map. I want to see what enemy tanks I will be going up against. What heavy tanks I can expect to see. I already have what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to this right side over here. Now, see, you guys can see how fast this tank can accelerate. Look at the acceleration on this tank. I mean, I am already moving past all these tanks, and there's another medium tank. There's an E50, and as you can see, this tank just goes across terrain like ice. I mean, it has basically like no ground resistance. Nothing is going to slow you down in this tank when you're driving it. You're going to be able to go across terrain very easily, even though you do have a slow speed. But other tanks are going to be slow because of moving across the terrain. So, here we go. Now, I decided I'm going to take this hill. I'm going to show you guys how fast this tank can go up a hill. It just goes right up hills, no problem. Doesn't have a problem. Turns on a dime. So, I'm going to go to the top of this hill, and I'm going to try and spot some enemies here on Sacred Valley. Love doing this right here. I take a peek, I decide I lock onto a target, I fire.
Let's find another target.
I happen to miss, but you know, I just wanted to get some spots. I wanted to see who was down there. Now I'm just kind of waiting for the enemy to kind of push up a little bit. So I'm going to take another little peek to see if there's any more coming in there. I see a couple, I see one more, a couple more. So now that I see what tanks are heading up here, now I'm going to go and get in position. Now I feel like on this map you have to get over here. You guys can't be sitting back on Sacred Valley. If you spawn on the side that I spawned on, you cannot sit back out here in this open area right here. You have to move up and get to this building. This building is the choke point. You guys have to get up to the building and to this rock. I mean, if you guys are sitting back behind that other hill, you guys are letting them come up. So I'm putting shots in here into this medium tank over here. I'm being very, very aggressive because our team did not push up. I try and take a shot. I hit the building. Horrible, horrible shot. Noob shot. I want to get the... I cannot have these tanks pushing up. So I take him out. Now, they're still down there. Very bad play on the enemy team's part. They should have pushed up. We were not defending well. Okay, so now I see a medium tank. Take him out, finish him off. Now you guys can see what this gun is capable of doing. At the top of the hill, you guys saw what the gun depression can do. You can shoot down on your team. Now, I have an IS-7 here. I was going to load up some Hesh, but I just decided I'm going to take a shot at the frontal plate. I am aiming down on him. I was hoping maybe it would be flat enough to get him, but now that another medium tank is circling him, I can sit here and put shots into his back. Already being very cautious of the arty here, so I'm moving back and forth after a fire. Moving again. Now you guys saw how my turret got damaged by that medium tank. Expect this to happen in this tank a lot. Like I said, the turret ring on this tank is a weak point. If it gets hit, it's going to get damaged like mine did. So now my turret is moving very slowly now.
Where did the target go?
A couple other tanks over here spotted. I'm stopping to see if I can get a shot on them. Very accurate gun, .32 accuracy. Doesn't look like I have a shot, so now I'm going to move forward and help out this heavy tank. But look at this tank just move across the terrain, guys. This medium tank is amazing. Now there's a Pershing, and I take a shot, and my friendly medium tank hits me in the butt. Shot goes off target. But look how fast this tank just accelerates. We caught up with the CE5, and now look at what it can do over hill. I took this hill. I want to show you guys what this tank can do just going over terrain. Look at this. I'm keeping up with this E5 and he's driving on the flat road. And I'm taking these hills. This tank does not lose speed over terrain, guys. This tank is amazing. It's not going to slow you down like you are in other medium tanks, which is some other medium tanks' downfall. You know, you can't get up to the speed to circle, you know. This tank has awesome acceleration. Now I'm looking for the artillery. I'm going to go arty hunting. I'm going to kill the pigeon. Shoot. Hit the pigeon. So now he's dead. And now there's only one tank left. We are going to win this battle. I have 4 kills. You guys have seen what this tank can do, the mobility. But on this map, in particular, if you guys spawn on the side that I spawn on, you guys want to get to that rock and to that house. You guys don't want to be sitting by that first house where I was spotting the enemy. I see so many tanks sitting there and letting the team come up that hill. You don't want that. You want to be firing down on the enemy. So that's why I played so aggressively there. So here you can see what I've done. And if you're on the opposite side and the team hasn't pushed, you guys need to push up the hill. Those other tanks made a bad play. They did not push up that hill at all. They should have pushed up that hill and they would have been able to take us. But anyway, you can see I finished at the top of the board. 4 kills, 2,000 damage, 1,000, almost 2,000 spot damage, guys. So, I mean, you guys have seen what this thing can do. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching. If there's anything else, please leave a comment.